Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to talk about a question that, a lot of us face at some point. Should everyone have children? It seems like a simple question, right? But once you start to peel it back, you find layers that are deeply personal, incredibly philosophical, and have huge impacts on all of society. For a long, long time, the answer was just a given. But today, it's a real choice, and one that carries a lot of ethical weight. This quote from philosopher Christine Overall just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this powerful, kind of unexamined assumption in our society that having kids is just the default setting. Think about it. We're always asking people to justify why they don't have kids, but we almost never ask parents to justify why they do. It's just seen as the natural, normal thing. And this societal pressure, well, it actually has a name. That name is pronatalism. It's like this invisible force that shapes the whole conversation. It's the pressure you might feel from your family, it's the social norms you see all over TV and in movies, and sometimes it's even government policies trying to encourage people to have more babies. It basically frames having children not just as a personal decision, but as a social good, almost like a duty to your community and your country. But you and I both know that default setting is being challenged, big time. For a growing number of people, parenthood isn't an automatic next step anymore. So what's really going on here? Why are so many people making a very conscious, very deliberate choice to be child-free? Well, if we look at it from a personal angle, the reasons are all over the map. I mean, look at this list. It ranges from wanting more personal freedom and the chance to focus on yourself to totally practical things like careers and money. But it also gets a lot deeper. Things like, serious doubts about your own ability to be a good parent, or this really profound concern for the kind of world you'd be bringing a child into. These aren't just minor reasons, they show a major shift in what people are prioritizing. And that's really the heart of it. We're moving away from a world where having kids was just part of the script of life to a world where it's seen as this massive, deliberate choice. And as soon as you see it as a choice, you have to start asking, what makes it a good choice, an ethical one? And that question, well, it opens the door to some much more challenging philosophical ideas. And that brings us to antinatalism. Now, this is a philosophical stance that takes the ethical question to its absolute extreme. Antinatalism argues that bringing a new person into the world isn't just a choice to think about. It's actually a morally wrong act. The whole idea is that life, no matter what, has suffering in it. And by creating a life, you are forcing that suffering onto someone who'd never asked for it. Okay, so let's break down the main argument for this, which comes from the philosopher David Benatar. It's called the asymmetry argument. Look at the table. For a person who exists, that's scenario A, pain is bad and pleasure is good. Simple enough. But now look at scenario B, for someone who never exists. The absence of pain, that's definitely good. But, and here's the key, the absence of pleasure is not bad. Why? Because there's no one there to be deprived of it. So Benatar argues not creating a life is always the better ethical choice because you guarantee a good thing, no pain, without causing any bad. But wait, there's more. Benatar builds on this with a couple of other really powerful arguments. First, the quality of life argument. He says we're all kind of hardwired with an optimism bias that makes us seriously underestimate how much suffering is really in our lives. Then there's what he calls the misanthropic argument. This one isn't about the harm a child will experience, but the harm a child will inevitably cause. It basically says that humans are a pretty destructive species, causing tons of harm to each other, to animals, and to the planet. And this quote just really drives that point home, right? Procreation isn't just giving life, it's a huge gamble with someone else's well-being. You're exposing them to all these terrible risks, illness, tragedy, death, without their consent. From this point of view, it's a harm that no amount of potential good can really justify. But of course, this is not the only way to look at the value of life. So this leads us to the big counter question. Yeah, okay, life has suffering, we get it. But can a life with suffering still be a gift? Can all the potential for joy and love and finding meaning actually outweigh the fact that there's going to be pain? This brings us to a really strong counterargument. And here it is. From philosopher David Wasserman. He offers a totally different lens. He argues that having a child can be morally okay. The standard isn't creating a life with zero suffering, because that's impossible. The standard is having a reasonable expectation that the child will have a life that they themselves would think is worth living, even with all the hardships. So the focus completely shifts from some objective calculation of good versus bad to the subjective experience of the actual person living the life. And this right here is the philosophical tug of war. On one side, you've got the antinatalist view. No amount of potential good can justify forcing guaranteed harm on someone. And on the other side, you've got this idea that a life can be incredibly valuable and meaningful to the person living it, even with all the tough stuff. And man, there is no easy answer. So let's zoom out for a second, away from the philosophy and onto the world stage. Because millions of these individual decisions are all adding up to create a massive global shift. As this chart shows pretty clearly, fertility rates are falling pretty much everywhere, and they're projected to keep going down. We are literally living through a complete reshaping of the human population. And this huge demographic shift brings with it some enormous challenges. An aging world means fewer working-age people to support a growing number of retirees. That puts a crazy amount of strain on things like pensions and healthcare. A shrinking workforce can threaten a country's economy and its ability to innovate. We are sailing into uncharted waters here, facing problems as a species that we've just never had to deal with on this scale. So what you start to see is that this one question is where three huge forces all collide. It's a deeply personal choice about the kind of life you want to live. It's a massive philosophical question about what existence is even worth. And it's a huge societal issue that's going to shape the future of our economies and our communities for decades to come. So look, this explainer was never going to give you a simple yes or no. The real goal was to show you the true weight and complexity behind the question itself. It forces all of us to look past just gut feelings or what society expects and to think really, really hard about our reasons. Which leaves us with one final, very challenging question to chew on. In a world where we have the choice, what reasons are actually good enough to bring a new person into it? Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it and learned something and you want to share your own opinion or experience, you can comment down below. I would love to see your thoughts and experiences. Subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell to get notified when I upload more videos like this. Have a good day. Bye.